One of the things I love about Dune is it always asks, what does it mean to be human? And I just think that is something to also be considering as we interface more with our technology. We were very much inspired by Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson's book, Sisterhood of Dune, and the whole Schools trilogy, which is really a very exciting look at a part of the Imperium, the young Imperium that was really thrilling to be working in. But we also were able to kind of set some of our story a little bit after the books ended, and that gave us a chance to kind of shape Valia Harkonnen's life story in a way that we felt that would be, best for television.
What was our main inspiration? I think in the books, there's a lot of references to what it was like to fight in those great machine wars. So we wanted to, even though we kind of quickly get a glimpse of what it was like, we wanted to make it kind of terrifying and the impact of it, of devastating the war. And there's pieces of those thinking machines that are interesting to our story as you go on and watch to the end of the show. So they hold a lot of interesting tidbits in terms of reveals.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this idea that can you ever really put the genie back in the bottle? Like, thinking machines are outlawed. They've been, humanity has freed themselves, but can something ever truly go away? And I think from the get-go, we sort of imply that, like, they're out there. They're out there in ways, and at first we see a sort of small toy, but, like, what else is out there? So that's always fun to think about. Sure. We'd have to give massive credit to our visual effects team. Mike Enriquez, our designer, Taryn Pratt, our producer. Together with their teams, we were in dialogue for a long time developing what that would look like. And we knew we wanted it to feel immersive and like something that we hadn't seen before. And you may not be able to tell, but those patterns going up the branches in that room are all genetic code in various places. And, we just wanted it to feel unfamiliar, but also register as digital, register as dangerous.
How do you bring to life a family tree? Through the eyes of a thinking machine.
The war on thinking machines, that was just a classic, humanity let loose a technology that took on a life of its own and a thinking of its own, and then intermingled with humans in a way that made it very dangerous and led to a lot of subjugation and suffering, and it took a revolt.
And I think our show is showing you two versions of it that are actually are kind of one cohesive version, which is that there's the conflict directly against thinking machines that we kind of show you in the beginning, but in 104 last night, you start to see that as thinking machines come back into the population, certain people, use them and not. And what do people think of other people who use machines and those who don't? And that can also kind of spur
its own kind of conflict.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorceress!
The reckoning is coming.
That's a really good question. I think both is the answer. Like, I think there were times where the thinking machines, as Jordan was saying, like in the Great Revolt, it was very much like man versus machine, and the machine was the threat. But I would say before you got to that place and even after, it is that mingling. I think that's what Frank Herbert is, very drawn to, that idea that it's the choice of human beings to give over their thinking, and that's dangerous.
I would agree with that. I think the moment, I think the real original sin is the moment where you choose to allow a thing to be an instrument of control and domination, and that happens in thinking machines in this world, but that happens, with power in general, the way the governments are running in this particular in our series in particular, and sometimes the way the sisterhood interjects itself.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
And I would agree, humans are absolutely dangerous too. Well, I think that artificial intelligence, like you said, is coming for us. It is definitely being developed in a way that feels unstoppable to me. So I think any conversation that we have about the boundaries of that or the uses of that and the limits we want to put on it or not are very valuable and kind of emergency conversations to be having, I think. And I think that's in keeping with the show. One of the things I love about Dune is it always asks, what does it mean to be human? And I just think that is something to also be considering as we interface more with our technology.
Can't say it any better than that. I think one of the more powerful powers that the sisterhood has is to be able to discern the truth from lies. And I feel like, that's an important way of controlling, people, because sometimes the truth is the truth, and sometimes it's a story that's made to feel like the truth. When you start to kind of bring in all these other entities, like a thinking machine that has the ability to tell its own narrative and make it feel like it's telling you the truth, you could lose yourself to it. So you gotta be very careful to kind of distinguish what the truth is. You know what I mean? Do your thinking for yourself.
And who's driving who?
Yeah.
I actually think Dune speaks to almost every decade. It's like, because it's about power, because it's about politics, because it's about humanity, and there's so much to be gleaned, I feel like, because it's always operating. People are always jockeying for power, and we're always making up stories about our leaders, and we have charismatic leaders, and what does it mean to believe in them or question them? And I guess the same goes for institutions.
Yeah, true. I think what makes Dune very powerful and resonant throughout the decades is that it really challenged conventional storytelling in the sense of the hero's journey. It really kind of pushes this message of beware of your heroes. One day they can be heroes, and the things they do the next day makes them the villain, and then back again. And I feel like that's a really honest way of looking at the world we live in.
Mm-hmm. And the complexity of people. We've always wanted to tell the story of how did the sisterhood go from being a sisterhood to being the Bene Gesserit that you see in the Frank Herbert novels and in the films. And so that would take more than one season. So, we hope that people enjoy season 1 and watch it, and we get to tell more of that story. That said, I think season 1 will be satisfying, and there are answers coming, and there's, reveals, and I think it very much will feel like a season by the end of it, but there's more story.
When you get to the finale of our story, what you're going to learn, you're going to want to know more.
You could go backwards to the Butlerian Jihad, and that would be an amazing place. And I think fans have been actually pointing that out. But I also think there's stuff after. You could even go far in the future past Dune Messiah, and that would be very tricky. But also there's amazing story there. Do you have a direction you would go in?
You mean in another story that's not based on Dune, or in a story based on Dune?
A story based on Dune.
In Dune. I think what's kind of fascinating is, spice, the nature of spice and how it affects the kind of economy in this universe, but also the livelihoods I think that's kind of an interesting to kind of really kind of get down into the specifics of it. I always thought that the kind of that's sort of in the periphery of always these Dune stories, the kind of criminal element, like the smugglers and all that. That's a fascinating world. And we kind of touch on it a little bit in our show right now. That's a fascinating world, you know. This is an interstellar society. They obviously have spread all over the universe. They have technology. They've gone through periods of ultimate technology, but it's still the Wild West out there. And I think that's really, it gives you a lot of kind of interesting places to tell stories.
Yeah, and even in our series, I mean, like, there are other schools that would be very interesting to see kind of take up more space and sort of compete with the sisterhood. So there's even more in our time period. Oh, I've said this. I've read it as a teenager, and I just think there's a couple books that had a very profound impact on me, and that was one of them. I can really remember the experience of reading it. I can see the book cover. I can be in my room. I can just close my eyes and think of Dune, and it brings me back to my youth in a very, very tangible way. So, but from that moment on, there's so much Dune material out there to engage with, and I always kept my eye out for more and more. Like, from that point on.
Yeah. I mean, I was a Star Wars kid, so growing up as a Star Wars kid, and then when you read Dune the first time and you understand it, it's complex. You got to read it a few times to kind of grasp it. But it really opens your eye to like what the possibilities are in that genre of sci-fi, and you realize, I mean, just how influential it really is to all the stories we've kind of loved from 1965 on. It's influenced it all, you know.
Well, I think inventing whole worlds that had never been on screen before. I mean, we loved bringing Lankavale to life and Wallach 9 to life and the Sisterhood. That to me felt like very innovative territory that was really at the heart of our series, was kind of trying to build out the Imperium.
I mean, on a personal level, I mean, the thing I think that was, it's not innovative, but the thing I think creatively, you know, kind of exciting was building out Mother Superior's wardrobe for when she goes into the Imperial planet. I think that was really kind of cool to see what she would wear if she wasn't wearing a full Trusayer gown, like how she would appear there. I thought that was really kind of fun.
Sisterhood above all.